Yesterday for our social studies lesson, you guys explored some different videos about Martin Luther King. So hopefully you have a little bit of background knowledge about who he is and what he stood for going into today's lesson. So we are going to continue learning about Dr. King. The name of this article is We're in This Together. Like I mentioned, or some of the videos mentioned, next Monday we do not have school, and that is because we celebrate Martin Luther King Day. And I think it's important for us to understand why we celebrate this man and all the great things that he did for our country. So before we get started, I'm going to look at some of the vocabulary words that we're going to see in today's reading. The first one is laws. So rules made by the government. People must obey the laws or they could get in trouble. In some places, littering is against the law. So just like we have rules here in school, many of you know that we also have laws that we have to follow, um, and they are just rules made by the government. Our next word, this is a big word, it is segregation. So a long time ago, parts of our country had segregation. So that meant that Black people were kept apart from white people. Black people couldn't go into the same schools, live in the same neighborhoods, or eat at the same restaurants as white people. So that is called segregation. So it was the separation of Black people and white people. Our next word is protest. So at protest, people gather together to show they all care about something. These kids all care about the earth. You've probably seen, this past year, we've had some protests here in the United States. So a protest is people coming together to show they all care about something. Right, those were all of our vocabulary words for this week, and now we're going to go ahead and we are going to get started on our reading. So, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a brave Black leader. He worked hard to change our country, but he didn't do it alone. He worked with other people. So, as we're reading today, I want you guys to think about why it is helpful to work together. And here on our picture, we have some men marching together, and this man right here in the middle is Dr. King. So, standing up together. Dr. King was born more than 90 years ago. When he was a little boy, black kids and white kids could not go to the same schools. They could not play in the same parks. Some restaurants did not let black people eat there. Why? Keeping people apart. There were laws in parts of our country that kept black people and white people apart. This is called segregation. Segregation made life harder for black people, but Dr. King was proud to be black. He knew segregation was wrong and unfair. The laws needed to be changed. So there were actually laws, a long time ago that segregated or kept white people and black people apart. So Dr. King, he was proud of who he was, and he was proud to be a black man or a black child, and he knew that that was wrong. So as he got older, he wanted to work to change those laws and stand up for what he believed in. So Dr. King, the leader. When Dr. King grew up, he worked hard to change the laws. He worked in peaceful ways. He was a great speaker. People listened to him. They liked his ideas. He also led peaceful protests. He led big groups of people. They walked on the streets together. They held signs. They sang songs. People saw the protests on TV. The protests made more people think the laws should be changed. So, like I said, as he got older, he knew that he wanted to make a change and he wanted to fight for his rights. So he did this in a peaceful way. He was a very great speaker, so people really enjoyed listening to him, and they liked the ideas that he shared. And then he also led different peaceful protests. So he worked together with a large group of people. They walked the streets and they held signs and they sang songs. and they were fighting for their right to be treated equal. Bringing people together. A peaceful protest does not keep people apart, it brings them together. They stand up for what is right together. This is powerful. Dr. King was a strong leader. He was brave, but he had a lot of friends by his side. They were more powerful together. It took a lot of hard work. It took years of protesting, but some of the unfair laws were changed. So he didn't make these changes alone. He didn't do all this by himself. Although he was the leader, he had a great group of people, a large group of people who really believed in him and they felt the same way and they all worked together and they were able to change some of these laws that were not fair. The work goes on. Dr. King is no longer alive, but his good work goes on today. People still peacefully protest. They come together to stand for what is right. You can stand up for what is right too, and having a friend by your side might make it easier to do. It might make you feel brave and strong, just like Dr. King. So, although Dr. King is no longer alive, um, he is still someone that a lot of people look up to, and he is seen as a hero. And a lot of his ideas are still looked at and appreciated, and people still agree with what he was trying to do. So he was just standing up for what he believed in and trying to make sure that everyone was treated equally. So this picture right here in the corner, it says, people protest today too. Kids can go and protest with adults. So you can see there are kids walking with signs, and like I said, they said there are adults with these kids, and they are able to protest as well. So this article was really focusing on Dr. King and what he did to make a change in our country. So remember, we talked about unfair laws that he wanted to change, and some of those laws were that black and white kids couldn't go to school together. Black and white people had to eat in different restaurants. Um, Black and white people couldn't go in the same stores or ride the same bus, or some had to sit in the front and some had to sit in the back. So there was just a lot of unfair laws in the United States at that time, and Dr. King wanted to fight for the right of everyone to be equal. And so he did that by, speaking, like we said, and holding peaceful protests and getting everyone to come together and fight for what they believed in a peaceful way. And he was able to do that. So it was a really big deal that he made all these changes, and they didn't happen right away. He had to work very hard, and it took sometimes a really long time for things to change. But since it was something that he believed so deeply in, he was able to make those changes.